Hey there, welcome to Cafe Genius Empresarios, episode number 5, Roundtables and Retrospectives. This is a solo episode, just me, Dan Hugo, the crazy person driving this effort. But there are other crazy people as well, and I'll get into that in a moment. But yep, we're ending the week. Today is March 31st, so we're ending the month too, and the first quarter. Crazy. So March 31st, 2023, kind of wrapping up a couple things, some details about the roundtable and the retrospective. Hey, it's right there in the title. And so let's get started. The Genius Roundtable has wrapped up its first cohort, which is a 3-month period of time where we get some entrepreneurs here in the greater Las Vegas area who are actually, they're either entrepreneurs themselves or entrepreneurial. That has been a discussion that we've had, which I'll touch on slightly, but the key is that this is a group of entrepreneurial people, which always means that the discussions are lively and thoughtful. So originally it was entrepreneurs only, just to preserve a sort of hands-on skin in the game, so to speak. But we've had some good discussions over our 3 meetings and then the time between, which is the nature of this roundtable. But first, why? Why is it a Genius Roundtable? What does that even mean? So Cafe Genius is a thing, a project, a group, a gathering, a notion that I started in January of 2022 when we first kicked off the pitch workout room at Tech Alley. Josh Levitt, infamous Josh Levitt, the organizer, the person behind, above, below, to the sides of Tech Alley, making it happen every month, said, hey, we should do this pitch workout room at Tech Alley in January. So I had a couple of days to kind of put a couple things together. And so Cafe Genius was a name I chose. It's inspired by Cafe Centro in San Francisco, where startups started. As far as I know, it's still open for business. It is spelled with 2 F's. So Cafe Genius, San Francisco, in South Park, which is very near the baseball stadium, the 21st Amendment. if you're out having a beverage before or after a game, and it's just a place. There's a nice park, literally, hence the name, I suppose. Probably Twitter would be a well-known name associated with that area, but maybe not anymore. But in general, the notion was, Cafe Centro is pretty cool and has a nice history, and it is a coffee shop, so it's a nice place to gather and chill, right? Discuss. So Cafe Genius, the genius part came from the lunch meetings we used to have back in the Downtown Project days. A few people would get together now and then, see who's doing what's going on. Not so much gossip, more hands-on, like, here's what we're doing here. What are you doing? Who needs what? So it was a pretty useful. It wasn't long lasting. It was only a few, and it wasn't the same people every time. But I went to several, had some interesting discussions and so on. As an outsider, as a spectator of the Downtown Project, I wasn't really so embedded in the day to day. But I used to travel around the world when I worked for Intel Corporation. So I had some things that I threw on the table, so to speak, in the discussion. So the Genius, Cafe Genius was born, and the Genius Roundtable then is a place where we can discuss these entrepreneurial ecosystem matters. So do you have to be a genius to sit at the table? We're not testing anyone, so that's really a moot question. But certainly people who are engaged, who will show up, who want to participate and will be thoughtful and constructive and collaborative. These are all things. If that makes you a genius, then yes, but again, not testing. There's no Mensa component. Although I will say the people that participated this first time around, and I haven't really asked them if they want me to make a big deal of their full names at this time, but they will show up if they don't opt out in our final paperwork and so on. But Evelyn, Stephen, Sammy, Matthew, Jason, James, myself have had a good run for the first cohort, and we're getting ready for the second cohort to start. We've settled on three top objective areas to look at moving forward. So this was not the only things we discussed over these 3 meetups and the ensuing email and other discussions and meetups, but we settled on the general entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that came from identifying the shape, like what does the ecosystem look like? What are its boundaries? What is its nature, if you will? Assets or things that are good, that work. Liabilities, things that are not so good or things that don't work. Metrics, which is how we measure. What should we measure? How do we measure it? And so we can sort of try to characterize the current state or current health of the ecosystem. And then what happens if we change things, so we know that whatever changes is better, worse, indifferent. And we're taking the OKR approach, so objectives and key results. So the key results part, we took a stab initially when we first spelled out the initial OKR. So we're continuously improving or tuning, feeding back, iterating. So specific key results will come from additional discussion, especially as we characterize the ecosystem now. And when I get to the Downtown Retrospective, you'll probably see how these things start to come together. So the 3-month cohort idea was to try to get some effective time to gather and work on ideas, to discuss and ideate. And that has worked out so far, but to not ask too much of people, because entrepreneurs are by their very nature very busy, especially if they're actually proactively engaged in their own venture or adventure, if you like. So a 3-month cohort seemed to be fair. We don't want to overtax or overcommit people. At the same time, attendance is mandatory. So we have a consensus schedule. We pick a time to meet. We demand. You have to show up. Everybody's contributing their time. It's not a time for let's say casual disregard for an RSVP, which is a common thing in the Las Vegas area. So this worked out. Nobody really complained. It is the time one spends at the roundtable in these discussions is valuable, not only because of the time contributed, but the time received from others. And so it's sort of a symbiotic effort, and it's very simple. Just, you have to you're either in or you're out. So if you can't make it, or if you don't want to commit, then it's better to leave that seat open for someone else. So draconian? No, not really. Just valuing the time contributed individually and as a group. So that's the way it is. The Downtown Project Retrospective, which I've mentioned, is a look back at the Downtown Project, which was a Las Vegas endeavor in the downtown Las Vegas area. It was a project driven by some funding associated with a Zappos purchase by Amazon. Some people have heard the name Tony Hsieh. He has unfortunately passed away due to some unfortunate circumstances, but his time downtown was certainly interesting, and it's certainly worth taking a good look at. Now that some time has passed, certainly there will be some who are still a little bit personally affected by how everything went and how the end of some stories were reached. So the goal is to not exacerbate these any I don't want to say negative, but any feelings, any anxieties or whatnot. So hopefully people that want to take an objective look at the structure and the operation, the good and the bad of the project itself, and not we won't be looking too much at individual personalities like this. So we'll keep it structural, keep it sort of academic, if you will. Although certainly people will have their recollections will be shaded and by time passing and by their own personal experience, which is important, and that's why we're doing this. So everybody will identify a different part of the elephant, as the saying goes, and we'll see what we come up with. So what worked and what did not. Certainly some things did work. There were some interesting ideas about how to energize a geographical community within an ecosystem. So one question would be whether the ecosystem was ready to support that. And I'll get to what an ecosystem is in a moment. So was the ecosystem prepared, or was the community that emerged aware of what was working and what was not in the ecosystem? What could they have done to make the ecosystem healthier or to interact more effectively with it and other members of the ecosystem, other communities in and around? And this will become important in the next, when I get to ecosystem. So the idea is to listen to people who were there, who were participating and who were watching. I was more of an observer at the time, since I worked mostly remotely and traveling. But when I was in town, I certainly talked to a lot of people. I spoke during and after about I've formed my opinion along the way based on these anecdotal discussions, but certainly taking some structure and applying some sort of a survey method is the approach we'll take. So it's probably going to last all year, probably longer, in fact. So all through 2023, we will try to organically reach out to people. There are a few people who have been early adopters. So I will say one of the Dylans. Which one? Who can say? Heather, Tyler, Sean, maybe Amy, maybe a couple of others. So some of you listening will know those names sort of, or you'll have a good guess, and some will have no idea what I'm talking about, and those are both totally valid. So the retrospective, again, is to look back, and what we really want to do is take what people contribute to this retrospective, assemble it together, and compare it to what we are finding today and into our near-term future with the current entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we can construct sort of a historical reference, since the history isn't too far back. It's I usually say between 2014 and 2018 or so. It might be 13 to 18 or 14 to 19, or I'll get an official number when we put together the final the final report on this. But that's the idea. Figure out what can we learn from history. Some good, some bad, surely, and see where we can apply it to what we're doing now. So the ecosystem, this is something like community and like community, friend, like. These are words that are often tossed around. So ecosystem has become popular. What is an ecosystem? So I happen to have taken a small amount. I'm by no means an ecologist, but I took a small amount of ecology, academic, not really even a class, but some academic pursuits in the area of ecology many, many years ago. So I've always kind of had in the back of my mind things like climax community and carrying capacity and what makes up an ecosystem. So if we make the entrepreneurial ecosystem an analog of a biological ecosystem, and we apply some ecology, I've been saying lately, entrepreneurial ecologist is what I'm doing lately with the Cafe Genius project. But if we say that our entrepreneurial ecosystem is made up of people, resources, and physical environment, and how they all interact, then we can sort of establish a baseline. And if you look at, pardon me, if we look at an ecosystem for the greater Las Vegas area, for example, it was a desert. So biologically, desert, right? Very sparse plant, animal, water, very hot, very temperate region. Cold winters, hot summers, right? That's a desert. And in order to change that, you have to apply a lot of energy. You have to do a lot of digging. You have to basically reshape what things look like, where things go, roads, waterways, water capture, water retention, and recovery. Not to mention food, agriculture in general, habitat encroachment, building homes, managing temperature with, thank goodness someone invented the Carnot cycle, or discovered it maybe. Chillers, Carnot cycles, obviously heat, HVAC to the rescue. So there's a lot that goes into making an ecosystem suitable for we humans, very fragile we are, to live here in the desert, our oasis in the desert, as though it may be. But there's effort involved in actually changing an ecosystem. So if we look at our destination city, which I think few people would argue that Las Vegas certainly is at the top of the list somewhere, of places where tourists go, where conventions go. There's a whole Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority that takes care of that, all the numbers and all the activities around that. So if we assume that tourism and hospitality are two of the major components, not necessarily number 1 and 2 or anything, but tourism and hospitality are definitely up there as far as contributions to our overall economy, as far as employment and keeping costs of living manageable and so on, so people can actually afford to live here. So if we look at what we have from a human economy, life on the ground perspective, then the question is our current entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is how people start businesses, whether it's a tech startup or a coffee shop or a food truck or a bookstore or a restaurant, anything you want to do. You want to start some business, and that is entrepreneurial endeavors. Small businesses are either number 1, the solopreneur, individual small businesses, maybe the largest. These are numbers we're tracking down as part of our efforts. But certainly, small business is acknowledged as a major, substantial, perhaps number 1 employer, the path to innovation, the path to creativity, the path to sustainable, job creation, and so on. So there are all good things about being entrepreneurial in general. So specifically in our ecosystem, what do we have? What do we need? What are we lacking that we can actually fix? What can we work around? These are all the sorts of things we're talking about at the roundtable, and even when we're not sitting at it. And by the way, we do use a round table with a space if we can, or we make a square table work. But the idea is that we all have these discussions. There is no head of the table. There's no talking at people. It's all proactive and productive discussion. And then the notion is that we should understand how our ecosystem works for entrepreneurialism here, and what might happen if we decide, just like turning a desert into a place where humans can thrive and drive, what happens if we apply a massive change, or an effort to apply a massive change to our entrepreneurial ecosystem towards, say, making a new Silicon Valley? Or as I like to ask, why doesn't Silicon Valley become the next Las Vegas, right? So why would Las Vegas want to be the next Silicon Valley? Is it possible? What sorts of efforts and what sorts of energy levels would be required to do that? And what would happen, right, if we turned Las Vegas into a rainforest, or say a savanna, pick a non-desert. If we actually did that at scale, then the current flora and fauna may suffer and die because it's not not how they can survive. It's not their ecosystem to live in. So habitat encroachment is already an example of where the changes we have made have impacted some of the sort of native life, plants, animals. And every once in a while, you'll see a coyote closer in than normal, and it makes the news briefly. Well, why is that? Because we have made a change to where that coyote is living. So if we change our economy, if we change the nature of the ecosystem for the entrepreneurial communities, there are multiple, then what will happen to them? I like to say that in an ecosystem, pick your favorite. There's, say, a community of flowers and a community of bees. So they both need each other, but they're both sort of separate. Like, they both do their thing and then they interact as needed. So a symbiotic relationship, one helps the other. What happens if we say, that's it, no more flowers, and we completely change to some other thing, right? Concrete buildings or internet connected unicorn companies, whatever. Then the bees have to suffer. So what seems like an improvement at the ecosystem level is actually destructive for at least one community in the ecosystem. So these are the sorts of things we're considering. I think it's not an easy question. I think it's not one that should be taken lightly. And so people with actual hands-on day-to-day with the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because they exist in it, are talking about it. And we're taking a serious look at it. And we are thinking about it, and we'll continue to ideate, maybe innovate. Maybe we'll implement some things. So the idea is to maximize my theory. Others can have their opinions, and these are the sorts of things that we're discussing. So my view is we should maximize our current entrepreneurial ecosystem, maybe not focusing completely on changing it. That energy level that we need to exert. Do we exert an energy level? We exert a force. I think we expend energy. So if we expend the energy needed to make these fundamental changes and it ends up doing damage to other parts of not only the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but just the general economic ecosystem, it may not go well. So that is the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish in general. Cafe Genius does some other things, the pitch workout room, pitch mingle. We're going to start a series on failure, as in maybe your startup didn't work, or maybe the project you were pursuing hit some roadblocks and was not able to continue. Maybe the pandemic was one of the problems, or maybe something else. I have a feeling as we pursue the retrospective, we'll have some interesting stories, and we'll see if we can convince people to share them. But generally, these will be learning experiences to help the entrepreneurial ecosystem, just like Pitch Workout Room, just like most of the other stuff we're doing. So your participation is always welcome. The roundtable is a little bit more selective, but everything we're doing in general is aimed at elevation of the ecosystem for people to pursue what they would like to do. Personally, I would like to see more kind of not necessarily level playing field, but having done my time in Silicon Valley, I don't know that being Silicon Valley is such a great thing. Maybe we should be a better Las Vegas. You may have heard me say that before, and you'll hear me say it again. So on that note, I thank you for listening. We're looking forward to some more podcasts with some guests. The Nevada project is coming to an end with a report coming out. When I say the end, I think that I just mean one particular part of it at least. So hopefully we'll have some conversation about that. I would love to have some of my colleagues in the cohort that has just ended, if they want to take some time, and we can talk about where we have been and where we're headed. And certainly entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people in and around the greater Las Vegas area will hopefully join in, and we can have various conversation about what works, what doesn't, where we're headed, and how we can make sure we get there. On that note, I wish you the best and looking forward to our next episode, and I hope you are too. Cheers.